applying Buddhist logic in meditation. That's quite a topic, actually, because you have to know what Buddhist logic is, and you also have to know what meditation is, and then you have to know how to link them and conjoin them. But before we get into the topic, let's just sit for a minute, watch our breath, let the mind calm down, and then we'll generate our motivation, and then we'll go into the topic. And let's cultivate our motivation. So the Buddha taught the Dharma with love, the wish for sentient beings to have happiness in its causes, and compassion, the wish for them to be free of dukkha, of unpleasant situations and their causes, and the lineage from the Buddha down to the present day, all the lineage lamas from India, Tibet, and other places have also taught with that motivation. And so may we too, as listeners to their wisdom, have the motivation of love and compassion for sentient beings, the wish to make a positive contribution to the welfare of living beings and to society in general. And in the long term, to become fully awakened Buddhists so we can be of the greatest benefit to living beings. So take a moment and cultivate that motivation so that we're all on the same page, doing the same thing for the same reason. And then open your eyes, come out of your meditation. Okay, so to talk about applying Buddhist logic to meditation. Why is this important? Yeah, because you look in how Buddhism is spreading in the West, and one of the main topics that people are really interested in is the psychological approach, the discussion of different mental states, how to differentiate virtuous and non-virtuous ones, how to overcome the mental afflictions that create chaos in our mind. So that's one of the things that is important, I think, to the audience, and and the Buddhist logic applies to that. But what I've also seen in the West is people get some introduction to Dharma about mental states. They get the teachings on the gradual path, which comes in all of the Tibetan traditions. And then they very quickly jump over everything else and go to Tantra. And some people don't even get this early bit about mental states and virtue and non-virtue and karma and rebirth and this, and they just walk into some event at a Dharma center, and it happens to be an empowerment, and they take it and have no knowledge of what they're doing, and then go, what did I do? Okay. So, doing the studies that talk about the logical approach, it takes some time and it takes some energy. Yeah. So in the Tibetan monasteries, it's a very organized program, and it's been organized like this for centuries. Okay. In the West, one of the questions we have is, do we try and copy the educational system in the Tibetan monasteries, in Western monasteries? And what about Western lay people? Do they want to do the whole curriculum, the monastic curriculum, as in the Tibetan monasteries? So these are some questions that are going on. And it's quite important, because I've noticed that when we skip over the part that has to do with logic and reasoning, then very often we actually miss the point of the Dharma, and our understanding of the Dharma is a bit confused. Yeah, we're not quite sure, what it's about. And we talk about attaining awakening, but what does that exactly entail? Okay. What I've also noticed, and this applies, I think, to sentient beings in general, is we are very strongly attracted to philosophies and psychologies that match our emotional yearnings, our emotional states. Yeah. So we want to believe something that makes us feel better. Mm-hmm. Don't we? And sometimes when we use reasoning and logic, we don't always feel better with what we learn. Yeah. When we shut down the thinking mind, and just go into visualizing deities and chanting mantra, boy, you can feel good. But how are you progressing on the path? Okay. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama, if you listen to his teachings, which I have had the fortune to do for decades now, he's always emphasizing reasoning and logic, Now, sometimes we think reasoning and logic is just intellectual stuff. It's conceptual, it's intellectual. All you have is a bunch of theories that you spout and you argue back and forth. Especially if you've been to India and you see them debating, and they're jumping up and down and going, and screaming at each other and pushing each other out of the way when they debate. It's quite active. Yeah. Then you say, well, what purpose is reason and logic? If this practice makes me feel good, well, that's good enough. Yeah, because I came here because I wanted to feel better. Yeah, but coming here with the motivation to feel better is different than coming with the motivation to attain awakening. Yeah. And so the monastic study in the monasteries is geared towards attaining awakening. Yeah. And when we're new to the Dharma, we don't really know what awakening is. Yeah. Is that like heaven? If you came from a Judeo-Christian background, what really is it? So there's a lot of things we need to learn to overcome the lack of information and the confusion in our own minds. Okay, and especially when we come and we want to learn meditation, because meditation now is the real buzzword. Well, one of the real buzzwords. Mindfulness is a close second. Okay, and uh, and we think meditation means just stopping all your thinking, get rid of all the conceptions in your mind. Yeah. And this is also something that you find in some, not all, but some Buddhist traditions. Yeah. Just stop thinking, get all the garbage out of your mind, and just stay in samadhi and blissful, peaceful. As soon as you think about something, it's conceptual, it has nothing to do with reality. That's what some people think. Okay, that's not exactly the Buddhist view. Yeah, when you read the Pali Suttas or the Mahayana Sutras, the Buddha is always discussing the Dharma with people. He's always asking them what they believe and then discussing it with them, debating it with them. It's really quite interesting, right from, the chronicles of the Buddha's life himself. What he did for sentient beings was he taught. Yeah, teaching involves concepts. Language involves concepts. Learning the Dharma involves learning concepts. Yeah. So meditation isn't just a thing of sitting down, closing your eyes, and emptying your mind of everything. At my very first meditation course that I went to, I didn't know anything. Yeah. And the lamas were late. And so the people guiding the session said, well, let's just sit and meditate. I had no idea what it was about, But I thought, well, I've read some things. It looks exotic. You just stop thinking. So I tried to roll my eyes back in my eye sockets and sit there like this and not think. It was really good that the lamas came not too long after that. Otherwise, I would have had a horrendous headache rolling my eyes back, you know. But they proceeded to teach the Dharma, and they said, you don't need to believe anything we say. You're intelligent people. You think about it. You try it out. You investigate it logically. And you try it out in practice to see if it works. Then you make up your mind if this is something that you believe and you want to follow. Yeah, but don't just jump in because it looks good. And I was so relieved when they said that, because I was really tired of people telling me what the truth with a capital T was. So I really like this approach to think about and examine things. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to give just a brief outline of how the topics that they go through in the monasteries, that some Dharma centers have courses that are similar to this. They may not do the debating, they may teach just the content without the debate, but they're covering the material. Yeah, although a few Westerners have learned debate, yeah, and they're learning to jump up and down and clap and scream. Yeah. Okay. So in the monasteries, it usually starts out with what's called collected topics, or dura. So dura, there's three kind of phases to it. The first phase, you're basically learning vocabulary and concepts. Okay, so you're learning what does the word is mean? Yeah, that's not the title, but that's actually what you're learning. What does the word "this is that"? What does "is" actually mean? Okay. And you're learning the difference between things being one, being different, are things that are related to each other. Are they related by being cause and effect? Are they related by being the same nature? So you learn just a lot of the overall view with the terminology and the concepts. Okay. Then you go on to learn low rig, or mind and awareness. And this is more the Buddhist psychology. So there you learn about the primary minds, our five sense consciousnesses, and our mental consciousness. You learn about the mental factors, what mental factors are virtuous, what are non-virtuous, what can be either, depending on the context of the situation. What's very interesting about learning the low rig texts is they aren't all about emotions. They're about mental factors. Yeah. And so we tend to think we want to hear about emotions, but there's so much more to our mind than just our emotions. Okay. There's, intention. There's mental factors of attention, of feeling, of contact, so aspiration, okay, belief. There's so many different kinds of mental factors that help us apprehend objects in different ways, And then, of course, there's the ones that are emotions, There's love and compassion, of course, and there's anger and hatred and belligerence and jealousy and, things like that. Integrity, there's virtuous ones too, of integrity, consideration for others, and so on. So you get kind of a view of the possible mental states and the different mental factors that come together to make a whole mental state. Then you go on to Tarig, and then you're talking about reasoning, and you learn all the different kinds of reasons. So here you're really getting more into the exact system of logic and reasoning. From there, you go on to the tenet system, systems, plural, okay? So as Buddhism developed, there came different systems of thought, yeah, how people organized the Dharma, how they laid out the path, different systems about what actually is the nature of reality, how is this realized. And so these systems started to come about in India, but when they got to Tibet, then they really were discerned and categorized. The views were categorized much more. And then that became usable as a pedagogical tool to teach the different views. Okay, so that already, once you get into Tantra, it's like, tenets, you're trying to think, well, this school says this about this topic, and that school says that, and that one says that, and that one says that. And they're saying different things, and they all have reasons why they believe what they believe. So which one's true? Yeah. And so sometimes people go, there's too many of these different schools. Just tell me the one that is true. That's all. I just want to learn the true one. Okay. And so sometimes the lamas oblige and teach you, prasangika. You think, now I know the true one. Actually, to understand the one that is usually considered the highest, to really understand that deeply, you have to understand the ones that came before it. Because the ones that came before it start out adhering more to our regular view that we have of life and of the world and of science and so on. And then as you go up through the tenet systems, then you start out, okay, I accept the first one. You practice like that. Then you start learning the second one. And then you go, oh, do I really believe that, what I learned in the first one? Because now this one says something different. So you have to start thinking. Then you get the third one. Third one goes off in left field. And you're going, how did this one get here? What's this one about? And then your teacher says, this one isn't in left field. It's a very natural sequence of the first and second. And you go, well, maybe for some people, but it looks like left field to me. And then you get into the fourth one. And the fourth one, they say, that's the best one. Okay, finally, I got to the best one. And then that one refutes the beliefs of the first three. But also what it asserts, you go, is that right? The fourth one says that things only exist by being merely designated by mind. And we go, what are you talking about? It's not just designation of mind. There is a thermos here. There's a thermos. And this thermos does not depend on my mind. And I could call it a thermos, I could call it a cup, whatever I call it, it's the same thing and it's still a thermos. Okay, and then that system says, no. And then you start debating what actually is the ultimate nature of phenomena. Okay? So you're studying that too. Okay? So you've gotten as far as tenets. Then you're still going on. This is like a 20-year program. Okay? So you thought kindergarten was long. Okay, so after tenets, then you have the study of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. And you mainly study Maitreya's text, The Ornament of Clear Realizations. And that one, it says Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, but it actually talks about the whole layout of the universe. It includes the ultimate nature, but it talks about a lot of conventionally existent things and how Buddhists categorize them, what they are, and so on. From there, then you go into studying emptiness, and the ultimate nature. And then you're also studying Pramnavartika, which is another text on logic and reasoning that explains the Four Noble Truths using logic and reasoning. And it also goes through and refutes all sorts of other views that were very prominent in India at that time. And so sometimes when we hear these views, we go, who would believe that? I can refute that without even studying Pramnavartika, But when you really look closely at what some of those views are, some of them are reflected in the, what do you call it? The, what? No, just the new age. That's the word I was looking for. It's reflected in New Age things, like, oh, there's an alternative universe. You can go back in time and redo things. There's a creator God, and we are all created by God, or there's one universal mind, and we're all parts of it, and we dissolve back to it, or there's one substance, and everything in the world came out of that one substance, like a black hole, and. So there's all these kind of views that they had in ancient times, and there's similar ones that people have now, and some of those we may actually have learned. Yeah, many of us as children learned all about God. God created the universe. Okay, God gives rewards, God gives punishes, God sends you to heaven, God sends you to hell. Yeah, and we learn that as kids, and then you come into Buddhism, and you don't hear anything about God except how Dharmakirti is refuting the existence of God, as a permanent creator. And you go, oh, I grew up thinking about God and thinking about God who creates the whole universe and manages everything, and it's God's will. That feels so emotionally comfortable to me. When unpleasant things happen, I just say, it's God's will. It has a purpose that I don't understand, but I can relax because God is in control. Yeah. And then Dharmakirti in Brahmanavartika says, sorry, kid, it's not like that. And then he goes through and refutes all the reasons you had for believing in God, because believing in God is very emotionally comforting. Yeah, it's very comforting. When we talk about karma and uh, what we experience being due to our own actions, that means that we have responsibility. Okay, I want free will, but I don't really want responsibility. Or as somebody once said to me, I want to look responsible, but I don't want to be responsible. Yeah. But here you are, and Buddhism is very clearly saying you are responsible. Okay. Yeah. Then from Brahmanavartika, you go on to Abbey, which talks about all the different phenomena in the universe and how they're related. From there, you go on to Vinaya, talking about karma, monastic discipline. And then, as the system is set out, then after all that study for 20 years, then you learn Tantra. That's how the system was originally. It's not actually like that now. Although in the monasteries, they discourage the monks, especially when they're doing their studies, not to take a lot of tantric empowerments, because then they don't have any time for their studies. They're doing tantra commitments. Okay, but Westerners kind of like that, there's deities, so okay, there's not God, but I can still pray to these deities. And the prayers in the sadhanas, I request blessings. Yeah. So they don't call it God in the name Chenrezig, Tara, different names. But, please bless me to understand this. Please bless me to be more compassionate. Yeah. And so that's really appealing. It's like, yeah, we just gotta, if We impute how you relate to God onto the tantric deities. If I please the deities, then I get blessings. And some of the prayers in Tantra say, may I always do what pleases you. And then you get really confused. It's like, wait a minute. I studied Pramnavartika. They said I'm responsible. Now I'm praying to deities for blessings. And now I'm visualizing myself as a deity. Well, what's the difference between visualizing myself as a deity and thinking of myself as Mickey Mouse? Yeah. One of my teachers used to ask us that question a lot. Yeah. What's the difference between being Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, and thinking of yourself as Mickey Mouse? Mickey Mouse also has a mantra. Chenrezig's mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum. Mickey Mouse's mantra is MICKEYMOUSE. Okay? So what's the difference? What are you actually doing when you're visualizing Tantra? These tantric deities. And how does that get you to awakening? And then you hear, actually, there's 2 stages in Tantra. What I just described is the first stage, generation stage. Then you get to completion stage. And that's talking about all sorts of things in your body, winds and drops and channels. And you're saying, well, wait a minute, what about lungs and heart and blood and things like that? I can't touch these channels. I can't see these drops that you tell me. And I'm supposed to move them around. I don't even know where they are or how to look for them. Okay. So then you begin to realize, oh, that's why there were the first 20 years of learning all that other stuff. Because you have to get the background and you have to know how to look at things with a very sharp mind that can discern what is true and what isn't. Yeah, what is virtuous and what is not. Okay. So we have to learn the reasoning and the logic. And actually, I haven't done that whole system that I just described to you. I've gotten bits and pieces here and there. But what I did learn is when you learn the debating system and you learn how to make a syllogism, a statement where you have a subject, a predicate, and a reason, and you're trying to present something in a logical way that can be proved, I began to realize that when you learn that system, you learn how to think clearly. Yeah, it's really quite brilliant because I don't know about you, but when I look at my mind, I may have a question. And we see that very often when the Westerners ask questions. You raise your hand and you get called on. And then you say, in the text it says, da, 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 and then da, 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 and then this one, blah, 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 and ho, ho, ho. And 5 minutes later, you've finished your question. And you expect the teacher to answer it. Yeah. That's not how questions are asked in the debate system. Yeah, we Westerners go, around and we present all of our ideas, how they relate and don't relate, but we don't know how to synthesize something and say it clearly. Yeah, and that's what learning the reasoning and logical systems, that's what that teaches you, how to really think clearly. Okay. Now, as you're learning how to think clearly, you're using your mind, you're using concepts. You're using intellect. And at first, your understanding of the logic is kind of on that level. But as you learn the system and as you learn to think more clearly, then you begin to be able to apply what you proved in a syllogism to your life. Okay, so let me give you an example. One of the first syllogisms, a syllogism is a statement to prove something. One of the first ones is, the subject sound is impermanent because it's a product of causes. Okay, so sound is the subject you're talking about. Is impermanent is the predicate. You're trying to prove that sound is impermanent. And what's the reason? Because it's a product of causes and conditions. Okay? Not very many words. So then you think, okay, is that statement true? The subject sound, first you examine subject sound and you go to the reason, is a product of causes and conditions. Is that true? Is it true? Yeah, it is true. Sound doesn't come out of nowhere. It came, somebody hit the bell, or somebody spoke, or something happened. There were always causes and conditions that brought about the sound. Okay. If something is created by causes and conditions, is it something that is permanent? Here, permanent meaning static, unchanging. Okay, if it's produced by causes and conditions, does it change or does it not change? Did that change as you're listening to it? Yeah. It's not static. It changes. Okay. So if something is produced by causes and conditions, it changes. Actually, science tells us that as well. Because why, you're in biology class, you study how plants grow. You plant a seed. Does the sprout come the very next day quickly? Did the sprout come without the seed changing? Or for the sprout to grow, do you need not only the substantial cause, the seed, but you also need, and this is springtime, so we're going to have a gardening lesson. We also need some warmth. It's a bit cold out today. Nothing is going to grow. You need moisture. It rained, so that's good. You need fertilizer. Well, we live in a rural area. The deer and the turkeys have been fertilizing the ground. So those are cooperative conditions that will help the seed grow. But the seed is going to grow gradually, and it's going to grow in such minute steps that it's difficult even to separate what is one step and what is the other. Because it just, like the sun, we can tell sunrise and sunset, that's easy. But every single nanosecond, and even the nanosecond of the nanosecond, the sun is moving. So every single moment, that's the sun is moving, or rather, maybe we should say the earth is moving. Yes, it looks like the sun's moving. Well, the sun's moving too. It's revolving around something. But, every single moment, the earth is moving. So it looks like the sun comes up and the sun goes down. But it's so infinitesimally small that we can't, conceptually, we can break it into moments. First moment, second moment, third. But to isolate a moment in which something exists, you can't really do that. Because as soon as you isolate, this fraction of a a nanosecond, then that fraction of a nanosecond also has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So what are you going to go with? Oh, I'll go with the beginning. Well, that beginning of the nanosecond, it has a beginning and a middle and an end. So when is this present moment that we always hear that we're supposed to abide in? When we hear, stay in the present moment, we think, oh, there's a present moment. There. It's there. It is one definable thing that doesn't change. I am in the present moment. I'm in the present. It doesn't change. Actually, if the present moment didn't change, then we would never grow old. Yeah. Everything would be frozen. Everything would be totally frozen because nothing could change and all change exists in these tiny things that we call moments that we can't actually pinpoint because everyone has a beginning, middle, end. Okay, so now you say, oh, yeah, that all sounds very good. But how does that pertain to my life? Okay, how is that going to move me to help me remove my problems and be happier and, do something positive in my life? Well, think about all the things that you're attached to that you don't want to separate from that are so meaningful to you. Maybe a relationship with a particular person. Yeah, maybe your education, maybe a sports team, maybe a possession that you have. Maybe you're one of these Russian oligarchs or American oligarchs with these huge ships. Yeah. Yeah. What was it? 5 million somebody paid recently? Yeah. So let's say that is what's meaningful in your life. Yeah. Is that something that's, first of all, did it come without a cause? Do your harmonious relationships with the people you come about have a cause or not have a cause? Did they come out of nothing with no cause? No, there was causes. You had to meet the person, you had to start talking to them, you began to share ideas. Yeah. And to keep a relationship going, it takes a lot of work. You have to keep creating the causes for harmonious relationships. Okay. So those relationships had a cause, and they're also changing moment by moment by moment by moment, aren't they? Yeah. And at some point, they're also going to end. Yeah. Because either you or the other person will die. Right? Yeah. So and the same thing with your big yacht. It came because of causes. There were people who designed it, and then people who got the materials, and people who built it, and so on and so forth. Lots of causes and conditions behind your yacht. And is your yacht, once it's built, staying the same? No, it's changing every moment. That's why you have to polish it later on. You have to repair it later on. Yeah, because it's changing in infinitesimal little amounts. Yeah, it's not remaining standing, static. And is your yacht going to live forever? Uh-uh. Yeah, it's going to decay and then break up and become pollution in the ocean, unless we get it together on our planet. Okay, so then you start thinking, oh, everybody and everything that I like so much that I don't want to be separated from, it's impermanent. It's changing all the time, and there's no way to stop the change. So initially, your mind of attachment goes, I don't like that. I want to have my relationship and it's permanent and static and we always get along, and I want my bank account, my car, and my yacht, and all these different things, my corner office, or you can do it the hippie style. I want my torn up jeans and my music and these kinds of things. I don't want them to end. They're not supposed to end. I want a life that's secure, that's predictable. But everything is changing all the time. And I try really hard to control how it's changing, but I can't control everything. I try hard, I try to control other people so that they always do what I like, so that we can have a harmonious relationship. Because harmony means they do what I want, so we get along. Okay, and we begin to think, wait a minute, everything's changing all the time. In the end, I can't really hold on to anything. And I too, this body that I cherish so much, that I want to look good, that I want to have strength, how attached we are to this body and its looks and its health and everything like that. And we're getting older every single nanosecond of a nanosecond of a nanosecond ad infinitum. Okay, so what do we do with that? We want security, we want predictability, but everything's changing and we have no control over the causes and conditions, all of them. We do have control over some of the causes and conditions, and this is where karma comes in. If we learn what are non-virtuous actions and we intentionally abandon them, if we learn what are virtuous actions and we intentionally engage in them, then we're creating the causes for the kind of future we want to have. Yeah. If we just throw up our hands and say, well, it's God's will, then we're giving up all of our power, and God doesn't seem to be doing a very good job with the world. Yeah. No offense to the people who believe in God, but, if I had created the world, I would have done it a little bit differently. So what does this mean? It means that the more I cling to things, my body, my possessions, my friends and relatives, my ideas, the more I cling to things, the more I'm trying to make something that is transient by nature static. Okay, and that's impossible. something which has the nature of change cannot be made into something that doesn't change. Once something is produced by causes and conditions, then causes and conditions keep it going, unless the causes and conditions cease. Okay. So then we have to ask ourselves, well, what really is the purpose of my life? If I'm chasing after all these things that I can't hold on to forever, because at some time or another I'm going to die, or the other person will die, or the external situation will change, given that that's the nature of the world, then why am I trying to make everything static? I'm trying to swim upstream. I'm trying to get oil from sand. Yeah. So then what's a better way to live? Yeah. Well, first of all, shed the clinging and craving and attachment, and just create the good causes that we can create. Yeah. Create good circumstances, because how those causes ripen depend on the circumstances we put ourselves into. It's not just creating the initial karmic cause, it's the decisions that we make day to day. Yeah. If I choose to go to the bar and drink a lot, I'm setting the stage to get in a car accident. Yeah. And of course you say, well, I don't drink that much. But still impaired. Yeah. Or, well, I take drugs. That's okay. Still, it affects your cognitive ability. And when we put ourselves in certain situations, that's like having the water and fertilizer to make a seed grow. So it's like, fertilizing and watering the karmic seeds, and they will grow and give the results. So I need to not only do virtuous actions and abandon non-virtue, but I need to be really careful of what I do moment to moment in this life, because I put myself in certain situations, and depending on the situations I put myself in, I'm creating the field for different seeds to grow. Okay, so that's one thing we conclude. Second thing is, no use clinging on to things. Yeah, create good causes, create good conditions. That brings happiness, it brings goodness, but those are going to change too. Yeah, so don't get attached to stuff. Yeah, you can enjoy it. Nothing wrong with pleasure. Yeah, Buddha didn't say pleasure was bad or negative. Yeah, what he said is when we cling to the pleasure, that's when we run into trouble. When we crave the pleasure, when we won't have anything else but what we want, and we get upset when we don't get what we want. That's what creates the problem. So then we start to look, oh, well, I have a lot of anger and, jealousy and pride that, I want my way and I want what I want when I want it. And that isn't actually working in my own benefit. Okay. And so then you begin to see that by eliminating these kind of mental factors, and developing the realistic mental factors, developing wisdom, developing concentration, and so on, then we can actually know the nature of reality, knowing that nature of reality enables us to cut the root of the ignorance that lies behind all the troublesome mental states. And when we cut that root of ignorance and create those virtuous mental states, especially wanting to be of great benefit to sentient beings, then we're creating the causes for awakening. Yeah, and we're eliminating the causes for dukkha, or what is commonly called, translated as suffering. Okay, so this is all something that we can do. Yeah, and His Holiness always says, praying is good, but praying is not sufficient. Yeah, you can pray, Buddha, may I attain awakening. But if the Buddha had the power single-handedly to take us from our confused state now to full awakening, he would have done that. No reason to keep sentient beings in suffering if you have the power to change that. But the Buddha can't do that. Yeah, he can teach us, he can guide us. Yeah, when he guides us, sometimes he has to say, you're doing it upside down. Yeah, or sometimes he says, watch your mouth. Yeah. Yeah, so the Buddha teaches us and the Buddha guides us, but he can't do it. We have to do it, And I think this is really the beauty of the Buddha Dharma, is that we can change. So the whole idea of impermanence is not negative. Oh, everything's impermanent, everything I love is going to end and go away. It's not just that. It's our mind is also impermanent. So we can nurture certain mental factors and make them increase. We can subdue and eventually eliminate some mental factors. Yeah. So the ability for us to change is something really working in our favor. Yeah, isn't it? We can become Buddhas. Yeah. And that certainly is much better than sitting and having a pity party and feeling sorry for ourselves. And it's certainly much better than blaming the rest of the world for our problems. Yeah. So we got to get to it. Okay, now I was supposed to lead a meditation in this, but our time is up. So what you can do is, if you listen to the whole talk, go back if you've listened once, and note the main points, okay? Then sit down and think about the main points. So especially think about like the last part of the talk, things existing due to causes and conditions. And then examine your life and how that pertains to your life, both in creating causes for suffering and creating causes for happiness. And think of, how to create the kind of causes for the future that you want to have, and how to relax and not cling and worry and fret so much about what we cannot control. Yeah, work on the causes and conditions and forget the worry. Yeah, worry has no beneficial purpose. Yeah, it just drives you nuts. So worry, anxiety, fear, yeah, all of those from a Buddhist perspective, guilt, all those are seen as mental factors to eliminate, that are not conducive for human happiness. Okay, they also asked me in my talk to, because the whole program is honoring His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for me to say something about His Holiness. So, like I mentioned before, I've had the incredible privilege of being able to study with him for many years. And, most of it, the study is with thousands of other people. It's not like I go and tap on the door and say, Your Holiness, I want to learn this and this and this. Please stop what you're doing and teach me, only me, because I'm special. That's not how it works, okay? To have these kind of teachings, you need the karma of a lot of people together. So most of the teachings I've had are at the big things. In working with him on the Library of Wisdom and Compassion, then, there's been times when there's been more one-to-one contact, but there's always other people in the room. He always invites geshes, and he has to debate. Yeah, he debate. I ask a question, and then they all debate in Tibetan, and then they kind of tell me the answer, and that's what goes in the Library of Wisdom and Compassion. So, yeah. So what I really admire in His Holiness, first of all, in his teaching style, he can teach something so complicated, at the highest levels, and then go very quickly to teach something that everybody in the audience can understand. And you see this especially when he would teach in the West. He often started off teaching the 2 truths, the 4 truths. Everybody's going, what in the world is he talking about? And then quickly he would go into talking about compassion. And then people would go, oh, I think I understand. But the more he talks about compassion and what it is, then you realize, oh, maybe my idea of compassion isn't exactly accurate. Okay, so he has this incredible ability to weave in and out of topics, and also to bring topics that you've never thought of as related, to bring them together and show how this relates to that, to that, to that. And you never had thought of it that way. And you go, oh. So incredible ability to teach in that way. And then also, just as a human being, so kind, so compassionate, brilliant sense of humor. Yeah. And he doesn't get offended about things. Yeah, I mean, the Chinese government have been calling him names for the last how many years, and he's not offended. And not only Chinese government, but even sometimes other Tibetans, or who knows who, call him names, criticize him. He doesn't take any of that personally. Now think about that. Imagine that in your life, that somebody could come and say anything to you and you don't get upset. They could call you any name in the book. Yeah. They can tell you, they can criticize your belief system. They can accuse you of things that you didn't do. And you respond with a mind of acceptance and compassion for the suffering of that person. Yeah? So he's really also, I think, a role model, showing us what we can become if we practice well. Yeah. Not to mention that he studies science, and so he's connecting Buddhism with science. He had, interfaith dialogues. Yeah, it's amazing when he does the interfaith dialogues. He puts on the outer accoutrements of some of the religions. He went to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, and he's wearing a yarmulke, and he puts his head on the Wailing Wall. Yeah, he goes and he's with Muslims, and he puts on, some of the hats that they wear. And I think many of you have seen, his Book of Joy, written with Desmond Tutu. So, really bringing people together and creating harmony whenever he can. Yeah, it's a very good example for us. So with this, we're going to end. Yeah, so let's just take a moment, come back to your breath. Think for a moment about some of the points that you heard that really struck you, that you want to continue to think about. And then let's dedicate the merit, the goodness, the positive energy that we created as individuals and as a group. Let's send that out into the universe. You can even imagine it as light rays coming from your heart, going out and touching all the living beings, bringing them peace in their body and in their mind. So in the long term, by what we do, even small actions and sharing an hour like this together, may good come for all living beings.